The snow fell heavy and slow, covering the narrow road as Henry and Martha walked side by side, carrying small bags that held the last pieces of their old life. They were old now, and their steps were careful, but their bond was strong even as the world around them felt cold and unfamiliar. The house they had lived in with family stood far behind them, locked by choice, not by accident. Words spoken without care had pushed them out, and silence followed them like a shadow. They did not argue as they walked because there was nothing left to say, and both understood the pain without needing to name it. Henry kept his shoulders straight even though his back ached. Martha stayed close, holding his arm. When the snow grew deeper, her face showed calm, but inside her heart was heavy with memories. She remembered shared meals, warm rooms, and voices that once promised safety. Those memories felt distant now, like something borrowed from another time. The cold air burned their lungs, and each breath felt harder than the last. The road stretched forward empty, and white trees lined both sides, standing still like quiet watchers. Night came early, and the light faded into grey. Henry knew they needed shelter soon. Martha had begun to shiver, and her hands were stiff despite the gloves she wore. He scanned the land, looking for anything that might protect them from the cold. Just as fear began to rise, he noticed a narrow trail leading into the woods, almost hidden by snow. They followed the trail slowly, careful not to slip. The woods grew thick and quiet, blocking the wind. At the end of the trail stood a small log cabin. Its roof was buried under snow, and the walls were dark with age. No smoke rose from the chimney, and the windows were covered in frost. It did not look welcoming, but it looked strong, and in that moment strength mattered more than comfort. Henry stepped forward and knocked gently. The sound was dull against the wood, and no answer came. He tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. He placed his hand on the door and pushed it. Opened with a soft sound, as if it had been waiting inside. The air was cold, but still the smell of old wood filled the space. A table stood near the wall, and a stone fireplace sat unused but ready. They stepped inside and closed the door behind them. The silence felt different here, not empty but peaceful. Martha took a deep breath and felt a small sense of relief. Henry gathered old wood stacked neatly near the fireplace and worked slowly until a small fire began to glow. Warmth spread through the room, and Martha lowered herself onto a chair, her knees weak from the walk. They shared what little food they had and warmed snow over the fire. Their hands shook as they ate, not just from the cold but from everything they had held inside. Henry spoke softly about the past, about days when they faced trouble together and always found a way. Martha listened and nodded, knowing those words were not meant to fix anything but to remind them who they were. That night sleep came slowly. The wind pressed against the cabin walls and snow tapped gently at the windows. Martha woke once and listened to the fire crackle. She felt safe in a way she had not felt in days. The cabin held them quietly, asking nothing in return. Morning arrived with pale light filling the room. Martha rose first and looked around more carefully. Shelves lined the walls filled with jars coated in dust. Old tools hung neatly, as if someone once cared deeply for this place. A thick rug lay across the wooden floor near the back of the cabin. The space felt planned, not abandoned, like someone had left with purpose and never returned. Henry noticed the rug too. As he moved it slightly, he saw a trapdoor set into the floor. It was heavy, with a metal ring fixed in the center. He tapped it with his foot and listened. The sound was solid, yet deeper than expected. Martha watched him, feeling a strange pull in her chest. It was not fear but curiosity mixed with a quiet sense that the cabin held more than shelter. They decided to leave it alone for now. Survival came first. The snow outside was deep and the road was gone beneath white drifts. They gathered wood, cleaned the space, and prepared to stay longer. Henry repaired small gaps in the walls while Martha organized what they found. Each task gave them purpose and steadied their thoughts. As the day passed, they spoke about simple things: warm meals, safe nights, and the hope of finding help. When the snow cleared, neither mentioned the family who turned them away. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned every moment. The cabin gave them time and space to breathe. As night fell again, the fire burned bright and steady. They sat close, listening to the wind outside. The trapdoor rested beneath the rug, quiet and unseen, yet its presence lingered in their minds. They did not know it yet, but this place, chosen in desperation, would soon reveal a truth buried beneath snow, and would waiting for someone patient enough to listen. The cabin stood firm against the storm, holding them safe, while the world outside slept, unaware that beneath its floor lay a secret capable of changing everything they believed about lost trust and second chances. The snow did not stop for days, and the cabin became their whole world. Henry woke early each morning to feed the fire, while Martha prepared simple meals using what little they found on the shelves. The routine gave them comfort and helped quiet the pain that still lived inside them. The cold stayed outside, and inside the cabin warmth slowly returned, not just from the fire but from the feeling of safety they had almost forgotten. They spoke more now about their past, not with sadness but with reflection. Henry talked about long years of work and how he believed effort always earned respect. Martha shared memories of raising children and the joy she once felt being surrounded by family. Those memories no longer felt sharp, they felt distant, like pages from a book already read. As days passed, their eyes often returned to the rug near the back of the cabin. Neither said anything at first, but both felt the same pull. The trapdoor beneath it seemed to exist between moments, like it waited for the right time. The cabin itself felt calm, as if encouraging patience. One afternoon the storm eased slightly and sunlight slipped through the frosted windows. Henry lifted the rug fully and knelt beside the trapdoor. He ran his hand over the wood, feeling its age and strength. Martha stood close, holding the lantern. They exchanged a quiet look and without words agreed. Henry pulled the metal ring and lifted slowly. The door opened with effort, revealing wooden steps leading down into darkness. Cool air rose from below, carrying a clean, dry smell. The space did not feel dangerous, it felt hidden. They waited, listening for any sound. Nothing came. Henry stepped down carefully, testing each step. Martha followed, her hand resting on the wall. The lantern light revealed a narrow passage leading to a wider underground room. The walls were stone, strong and smooth, as if built to last. At the bottom they stood still, taking in the sight before them was a large chamber reinforced with heavy beams. Crates were stacked neatly along the walls, all sealed and marked with faded symbols. A metal table stood at the center, holding old papers bound together carefully. Martha felt her breath catch. She had never seen anything like it. Henry walked slowly, touching a crate and feeling its weight. He opened one carefully. Inside were sealed bars wrapped in thick layers. The sight stunned him and he stepped back, sitting heavily on a crate. They did not speak for a long time. The truth settled slowly. The cabin was not just shelter, it was protection for something meant to stay hidden, a story of fear and preparation written by hands long gone. Henry finally spoke softly, saying they needed to be careful. Martha nodded, knowing that while this discovery could change everything, it could also bring danger if handled wrong. They gathered the papers and returned upstairs, closing the trapdoor carefully. That night they did not sleep easily. Their minds raced with questions about who had hidden the chamber and why. The weight of responsibility pressed on them heavier than the cold ever had, yet beneath the worry was a steady sense of purpose. The next morning they read the papers together. The writing told of wealth hidden during uncertain times, meant to be protected until the world felt safe again. Names, dates, and instructions filled the pages. The chamber was never reclaimed because those who hid it never returned. Henry realized then that this was not luck alone, it was timing. The cabin had waited, the snow had guided them, and their loss had led them here. They agreed to tell no one, yet not family, not strangers. Trust was fragile, and once broken it took time to rebuild. They focused instead on surviving the winter and planning carefully. As days passed they improved the cabin and kept the underground room sealed. They spoke quietly about the future, about safety, and about using whatever they found not for power but for peace. Martha said she wanted to help others who felt forgotten. Henry agreed, believing dignity mattered more than comfort. The snow slowly began to melt and the road reappeared faint beneath white paths. The world outside would soon return, but Henry and Martha were no longer the same people who arrived broken and cold. They had found shelter, yes, but they had also found meaning beneath the floor of a forgotten cabin, waiting patiently for someone strong enough to listen. The snow outside slowly softened and thin paths began to appear around the cabin. Henry noticed it first one quiet morning as he opened the door and felt lighter air touch his face. The winter that trapped them was loosening its grip, and with it came the return of choices. Martha stood beside him wrapped in a thick shawl and watched the trees drip slowly as if the land itself was waking. Inside, the cabin life had settled into calm routine. They cleaned, repaired, and organized each space with care. The underground chamber remained sealed and silent beneath their feet. Its presence was always felt, but never rushed. Henry believed some things demanded patience, and Martha trusted his judgment. The weight of what they had found stayed in their thoughts but did not control them. They spent long hours reading the papers again and again, trying to understand every detail. The story beneath the words became clearer. The wealth had been hidden during a time of fear when trust was dangerous and survival required silence. Those who built the chamber had planned for protection, not escape. They expected to return, but time had chosen otherwise. Martha felt deep respect for those unseen people. She imagined their worry and hope as they sealed the chamber, believing the future would be kinder. Henry felt the same and said quietly that they were not owners but caretakers, that thought brought them peace. As the snow melted further, signs of the outside world returned. A distant vehicle passed one afternoon, breaking the long silence. Henry and Martha exchanged a look. They knew the moment of isolation was ending. With it came risk but also opportunity. Henry suggested they seek help from someone trained in law and protection. Martha hesitated at first. Her trust had been broken once already, but she knew hiding forever was not the answer. They discussed carefully what to say and what to keep private. They agreed to reveal only what was needed and only to someone chosen with care. They walked into the nearest town days later, dressed simply, blending into the quiet streets. The town felt small but alive. People moved without noticing them, and that felt comforting. Henry found a small office run by an older man known for honesty and long service. Inside the office, Henry spoke calmly, explaining they had found something significant on abandoned land and needed guidance. Martha watched the man closely, reading his face. His reaction was measured, not greedy, not dismissive. He listened, asked careful questions, and suggested steps for protection and verification. They shared only a part of the truth, enough to begin the process. The man advised patience and privacy and promised discretion. As they left, Martha felt her chest ease slightly. The choice felt right. The days that followed were filled with careful movement. Officials arrived quietly and without attention. The cabin was inspected respectfully and the chamber documented properly. No news spread and no rumors followed. Henry insisted on this condition and it was honored. During this time, Martha often sat alone reflecting on their journey. She thought about being turned away and how close they had come to losing hope. She realized that loss had stripped away illusion and left only what mattered. She no longer felt anger toward the family who rejected them, only distance. Henry remained steady throughout each meeting, asking questions, ensuring safety and fairness. He had always believed that calm strength carried more power than force. Martha watched him with admiration, knowing that age had sharpened his wisdom rather than dulled it. As weeks passed, the process moved forward slowly but surely. The cabin was placed under protection, and its history acknowledged. The wealth beneath was confirmed and secured, without noise, without crowds, without celebration. One evening Henry and Martha returned to the underground chamber together. They stood in silence for a long time. Lantern light touched the stone walls softly. Henry rested his hand on the wood beam and whispered thanks. Martha closed her eyes and breathed deeply. They talked about the future, not in numbers or plans but in values. Martha wanted quiet days, warm meals, and the chance to help others without being seen. Henry wanted peace, safety, and dignity. They both agreed that wealth should serve life, not control it. Above them, the cabin felt warmer than ever. Light filled its rooms, and laughter returned softly. The place that once saved them now felt like home. The world outside continued to move, unaware of the quiet story unfolding in the woods. Henry and Martha did not seek recognition, they sought balance. They had been broken by betrayal and rebuilt by patience. The winter had tested them but also guided them, and beneath their feet lay not just fortune but proof that even after loss something meaningful could still be found by those willing to wait. The final season arrived quietly without announcement. Spring touched the land gently, and the cabin no longer felt hidden by snow. Henry and Martha woke each morning to birds and soft light filtering through the trees. The cold that once threatened them had passed, and in its place stood calm certainty. They moved through the cabin with ease, knowing every corner, every sound, every breath of the place that had saved them. The legal process reached its end without noise or attention. The wealth beneath the cabin was secured through careful steps and strong protection. Henry made sure everything was done clean and respectful. Martha trusted his calm guidance and stood beside him through every decision. They chose privacy above display and safety above speed. The world never noticed the shift, and that was exactly how they wanted it. The cabin was officially recognized as protected land, valued for its history, and care plans were made to preserve it rather than remove it. Workers arrived quietly during daylight hours, repaired the roof, strengthened the walls, and restored the fireplace. They never asked questions, and Henry never offered answers. The deeper story remained untouched, known only to those who respected silence. Martha spent her afternoons planting small flowers near the cabin steps. She found joy in watching life grow again in the soil. She believed the land had given them shelter and deserved kindness in return. Henry built a bench near the trees where they sat together each evening, watching the sky change color. They did not return to the family who turned them away, not out of bitterness but understanding some paths were not meant to be walked again. Martha wrote a short note wishing peace and left it at that. Henry agreed, knowing closure did not always need response. Their hearts felt lighter once the choice was made. With guidance, they began supporting others quietly. Elderly people facing loss, cold, and isolation. Help came through trusted channels without names or recognition. Martha insisted on this. She remembered how pride could ache and believed dignity mattered more than gratitude. Henry supported her vision, and together they made choices rooted in compassion. The underground chamber was sealed once more, not hidden but honored. Its purpose had changed. The wealth was no longer a secret waiting to be found. It was a tool resting quietly behind the scenes. Henry checked the locks one final time and felt peace settle in his chest. Months passed, and the cabin stood fully restored. Visitors sometimes paused nearby, admiring its simple beauty, unaware of the story beneath its floor. Henry and Martha welcomed neighbors for small gatherings, sharing warm food, laughter, and quiet stories. The cabin filled with life again, replacing the silence that once lived there. At night they slept deeply, holding hands, listening to the wind move gently through the trees. They no longer feared being pushed aside or forgotten. Their place in the world felt steady, earned through patience and resilience. Martha often reflected on the night they arrived, cold and broken. She realized that loss had not ended them, it had guided them. Henry felt the same, believing strength grew when tested gently rather than crushed. They never spoke of fortune as a miracle, they spoke of it as responsibility. They knew that what mattered most was not what they found beneath the cabin but what they built above it. In the end, their story did not shine through headlines or crowds. It lived quietly in restored walls, warm meals shared, kindness given without reward, and peace earned through endurance. They had been betrayed, yes, but they were not defeated. The cabin had waited, and when the right hearts arrived, it opened not just its door but a future grounded in belonging and grace.